Taman Park adjusted his formal jacket and walked through the long hallway of the council station. The massive space station hung in the dark void near the galaxy's center. Alien beings of all shapes and sizes moved past him, their eyes barely glancing at the human ambassador. After 3 years in this place, Taman had grown used to being ignored. The council chamber stretched before him like a great theater. Thousands of seats rose in circles around a central speaking platform. Each seat held a representative from one of the galaxy's many species. The oldest and most powerful races sat in the front rows, while newer members like humanity were placed far in the back. Taman climbed to his assigned seat in the upper section. The chair was smaller than those given to other species, a not-so-subtle reminder of humanity's place in the galactic order. He sat down and opened his datapad, reviewing the proposal he would present today. "Order! Order!" called Elder Vorthak, the meeting's leader. The tall, crystal-like being stood at the center of the chamber. His voice echoed through hidden speakers, reaching every corner of the vast room. "Today we address the energy crisis affecting our outer rim colonies. For months, settlements on the galaxy's edge had struggled with power shortages. Ancient fusion reactors were breaking down, and replacement parts were expensive and slow to deliver. The crisis affected billions of beings across hundreds of worlds. One by one, the elder species presented their solutions. The crystalline hegemony suggested building new reactors using their traditional methods. The process would take 50 years and cost enormous amounts of money. The Machine Collective offered to loan automated workers, but their price was almost as high as the hegemony's proposal. When Taman's turn came, he stood and activated his holographic display. A 3-dimensional image appeared above the speaking platform, showing his proposal in detail. "Honored council members," Taman began, his voice steady despite the thousands of eyes watching him. "Humanity offers a different solution. Our engineers have developed a new type of portable fusion core. These units are smaller, cheaper to build, and can be transported quickly to any colony that needs them." The hologram showed sleek, compact devices that could fit inside a standard cargo ship. Technical specifications scrolled alongside the images, displaying impressive efficiency ratings and safety features. "Each core can power a medium-sized colony for 10 years. Taman continued. "We can begin production immediately and deliver the first units within 6 months. The total cost would be 1/10 of the current proposals." Murmurs filled the chamber as representatives discussed the human plan. Taman allowed himself a small smile. The proposal was solid, practical, and would solve the crisis quickly. Surely the council would see its value. Elder Vorthak's crystal body flashed with colored lights as he considered the presentation. "Ambassador Park," he said, his tone cold and dismissive, "while we appreciate humanity's enthusiasm, this council requires proven solutions from experienced civilizations. Your species has existed in space for barely 2 centuries. What could you possibly know about galactic-scale engineering projects?" "With respect, Elder," Taman replied, "our engineers have successfully designed and built fusion systems for over 100 human worlds. The technology is tested and reliable." "Human worlds," scoffed Representative Krelthan of the Void Touched. The slug-like being's tentacles waved dismissively. "Small colonies with basic needs. The outer rim requires industrial-grade solutions, not primitive human tinkering." Other council members nodded in agreement. Taman felt his jaw tighten, but kept his expression neutral. "Perhaps if the council reviewed our technical data—" "Enough," Elder Vorthak interrupted. "This matter requires serious consideration by serious minds. Infant species should observe and learn, not attempt to guide their elders." The crystal being turned away from Taman, effectively ending the human's participation in the discussion. The council quickly approved the crystalline hegemony's proposal, committing to a 50-year project that would cost more than most species' entire annual budgets. As the meeting continued, Taman sat in his small chair, watching the council debate other matters. Each time a younger species tried to contribute, they were quickly silenced. The message was clear. The galaxy belonged to the old races, and everyone else existed only to serve them. When the session ended, Taimin gathered his materials and prepared to leave. As he walked through the station's corridors, he passed groups of alien beings discussing the day's decisions. None of them acknowledged his presence. In his quarters, Taimin activated a secure communication link to Earth. The image of Admiral Hyejin Lee appeared on his screen. Her weathered face showed the concern she felt for humanity's position in the galaxy. "How did it go?" she asked. "As expected," Taimin replied, loosening his formal jacket. "They dismissed our proposal without even looking at the technical specifications. Vorthak called us an infant species again." Admiral Lee's expression darkened. "And the energy crisis? They approved a 50-year construction project that will cost more than our entire defense budget. Meanwhile, billions will suffer in the Outer Rim colonies. Any word on the debris clearing assignment?" Taimin nodded grimly. "We're officially responsible for cleaning the asteroid fields around the major trade routes. Apparently it's too dangerous for civilized species to handle." Admiral Lee was quiet for a moment. Through the communication link, Taimin could see her standing on the bridge of her flagship. The Earth Defense Fleet spread out beyond the viewports. "Dangerous work for primitive humans," she said finally. "How convenient for them." 3 ships have been destroyed clearing those fields in the past year, Taimin said. "The Council calls it an acceptable loss rate." "Acceptable for whom?" Admiral Lee's voice carried a cold anger. "Not for the families of those crews." Taimin rubbed his temples, feeling the weight of his position. Every day brought new insults, new dismissals, new reminders that humanity was considered barely worthy of Council membership. Yet they needed access to galactic trade routes and technology. Earth's colonies depended on it. "There's something else," he said. "I heard rumors about budget cuts. The Council is reducing funding for Outer Rim defense stations. They're pulling back their patrol fleets." Admiral Lee leaned forward. "Pulling back from where?" "Everywhere beyond the Middle Territories. If something happens out there, the colonies will be on their own." The connection was quiet except for the soft hum of the station systems. Both humans understood what this meant. The Council was abandoning the frontier, leaving the most vulnerable worlds to fend for themselves. "Keep me informed," Admiral Lee said finally. "And Taimin, remember what we discussed. Humanity won't accept this treatment forever." The communication ended, leaving Taimin alone in his quarters. Outside his window, the galaxy's core blazed with ancient light. Somewhere out there, human colonies struggled with failing power systems while the Council debated 50-year solutions. Somewhere else, human crews risked their lives clearing dangerous debris because other species considered the work beneath them. Taimin looked at his reflection in the dark window. 3 years of diplomatic service had aged him, but his resolve remained strong. Humanity deserved better than this. The question was, what would they do about it? 3 months had passed since the Council rejected humanity's energy proposal. The Outer Rim colonies continued to suffer, while the crystalline hegemony slowly began their 50-year construction project. Then everything changed in a single day. Captain Ji-hoon Kim stood on the bridge of the human patrol ship Defiance, watching his sensors with growing concern. Strange readings had been appearing at the edge of known space for weeks. Energy signatures that didn't match any known technology moved through the void, leaving destroyed star systems in their wake. "Captain," called sensor operator Min-Soo Lee from her station. "I'm picking up a distress signal from the Kepler station. It's bad, sir." Ji-hoon moved to her console and read the incoming data. His face went pale. Kepler station had been home to 3 million beings from dozens of different species. Now the sensors showed nothing but debris and empty space. "Get me Admiral Lee immediately," Ji-hoon ordered. Within minutes, Admiral Hyejin Lee's image appeared on the main screen. Behind her, the command center of the Earth Defense Fleet buzzed with activity. "Admiral, we have a situation," Ji-hoon began. "Something has destroyed Kepler Station. Complete annihilation. No survivors detected." Admiral Lee's expression hardened. "Show me the data." The sensor readings transferred to her screens. For a long moment, she studied the information in silence. When she looked up again, her eyes held a terrible understanding. It's the Void Swarm, she said quietly. I was hoping we'd never see them again. Ji-hoon felt his blood turn cold. Every spacer had heard stories of the Void Swarm, an ancient, mechanical plague that had terrorized the galaxy thousands of years ago. The historical records described machines that consumed entire worlds, turning matter and energy into more of themselves. But they were destroyed, Ji-hoon said. The old records say the Council wiped them out. The old records were wrong, Admiral Lee replied. Keep monitoring the situation. I'm calling an emergency meeting with the Council. 6 hours later, the Council chamber filled with representatives from across the galaxy. The mood was different from usual meetings. Fear replaced the typical arrogance as species that hadn't spoken to each other in decades shared intelligence reports. Elder Vorthak stood at the center of the chamber, his crystal body flickering with nervous energy. The situation is clear, he announced. The Void Swarm has returned. They have destroyed 17 colonies in the past week and show no signs of stopping. Dr. So-Young Choi, humanities chief scientist, sat in the human section studying the data. The patterns were obvious to anyone who understood warfare. The Void Swarm was moving inward, consuming everything in their path as they advanced toward the galaxy's more populated regions. What is the Council's response? Asked Representative Krelthan. Immediate evacuation of all Outer Rim territories, Elder Vorthak replied. All valuable species and resources will be relocated to the core worlds while we develop countermeasures. Ambassador Taemin Park stood up. What about the colonies that can't be evacuated? There are billions of beings in the Outer Rim. Regrettable but necessary losses, Vorthak said coldly. The survival of galactic civilization requires difficult choices. Taemin's hands clenched into fists. You're abandoning them, writing off entire worlds without even trying to defend them. The Outer Rim is indefensible, replied Representative Krelthan. Better to preserve what we can than lose everything. Dr. So-Young Choi requested permission to speak. When granted, she activated her holographic display, showing detailed analysis of the Void Swarm's technology. Honored Council, she began. My research indicates that the Void Swarm can be stopped. Their machines operate on quantum frequencies that can be disrupted using modified human technology. We could develop weapons. Enough! Elder Vorthak's voice boomed through the chamber. We will not risk the galaxy on untested human theories. Your species has a dangerous tendency toward violent solutions. This isn't theory, Dr. Choi insisted. The quantum disruption technology is proven. We've used it successfully in our own defense systems. Primitive weapons against primitive threats, scoffed Vorthak. The Void Swarm requires sophisticated responses from mature civilizations. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the elder species sections. Once again, humanity's contributions were dismissed without consideration. Over the following days, the situation grew worse. The Void Swarm consumed more colonies, moving steadily toward inhabited space. Council fleets retreated without engaging, following orders to preserve their forces for the defense of core worlds. Admiral Hai-Jin Lee watched the evacuation reports from her command ship. Millions of beings fled their homes, but millions more were trapped in systems too remote for rescue. The Council's response was to pull back even further, establishing defensive lines that abandoned vast regions of space. Admiral, called her, Communications Officer. Priority message from Earth. President Jae-Young Lee wants to speak with you. The President's image appeared on Admiral Lee's private screen. The leader of humanity looked tired but determined. Hyejin, I've been following the Council's response to this crisis. They're abandoning the Outer Rim completely. Yes, ma'am. Standard Council procedure. Preserve the core, sacrifice the periphery. How many human colonies are in the affected regions? Admiral Lee checked her data. 47 worlds with human populations. Another 130 mixed colonies where humans make up significant percentages of the population. And the Council's evacuation plans for our people? There are none. Humans aren't classified as a valuable species for evacuation purposes. President. Lee was quiet for a moment. When she spoke again, her voice carried the weight of command. Prepare our ships for independent action. If the Council won't defend our people, we will. Meanwhile, on the Council station, Ambassador Taman Park made one final attempt to reason with the galactic leadership. He requested a private meeting with Elder Vorthak and the senior council members. Elder, Taman said, humanity is prepared to lead a defense of the Outer Rim colonies. Our technology can stop the Void Swarm. All we need is council support. The matter is closed, Vorthak replied. The Outer Rim will serve as a buffer zone while we prepare proper defenses. Perhaps this crisis will teach younger species the value of patience and proper planning. You're talking about genocide, Taman said, his diplomatic calm finally cracking. Billions of innocent beings. I'm talking about survival, Vorthak shot back. The galaxy's survival, not the survival of expendable frontier populations, the pay. Final insult came during an emergency council session the next day. Reports showed the Void Swarm had accelerated their advance, consuming 3 more worlds in a single day. When Dr. So-Young Choi again requested permission to present her research on quantum disruption weapons, Elder Vorthak's response ended any hope for cooperation. Perhaps it's time the galaxy's children learned their place through consequence, he announced. Humanity's warmongering nature has been tolerated long enough. Your aggressive proposals are inappropriate for civilized discourse. The chamber fell silent. Every being present understood the implications. Humanity was being blamed for the crisis. Their offers of help twisted into accusations of warmongering. Ambassador Taman Park stood slowly. His weathered face showed no emotion, but his eyes burned with cold fury. For 3 years, he had endured insults and dismissals. He had watched his people be treated as expendable labor. He had seen their contributions ignored and their worth questioned. Now, as billions faced death and humanity offered the only viable solution, they were being silenced once again. Very well, Taman said quietly, his voice carrying to every corner of the vast chamber. We have learned our place, and it is not here. He gathered his materials, bowed formally to the assembly, and walked out of the council chamber. Behind him, confused murmurs filled the air as representatives tried to understand what had just happened. In her laboratory, Dr. So-Young Choi received the message she had been expecting. The recall order was simple and direct. All human personnel were to return to Earth immediately. The diplomatic mission was over. As she packed her research, she looked at the quantum disruption data one more time. The solution to the Void Swarm was right there, waiting to be implemented. But the Council preferred to let billions die rather than accept help from humanity. Soon they would understand the true cost of their arrogance. The recall order reached every human installation across the galaxy within hours. From the smallest research stations to the largest military bases, the message was clear and simple. Come home. General Wu Jin Han stood in the command center of the joint military facility on Titan Prime, watching as his staff prepared for the largest evacuation in human history. Around him, alien officers from other species looked confused as humans began packing their equipment and closing down shared systems. General Han called Commander Veltar of the Aquatic Federation. What is the meaning of this activity? We received no notification of a scheduled withdrawal. Because there wasn't one, General Han replied, not looking up from his datapad. This is permanent. All human personnel are leaving council space. Commander Veltar's gill slits fluttered in confusion. But why? The joint defense agreements are terminated as of today, General Han finished. You'll receive official notification through diplomatic channels. Across the facility, human technicians worked with practiced efficiency. They had trained for this possibility, though none had expected it to happen so soon. Equipment that belonged to humanity was carefully removed and loaded onto transport ships. Systems that had been built with human technology were systematically shut down. Captain Min Ho-yoon supervised the removal of the quantum communication array from the station's central hub. The device was humanity's contribution to the joint facility, allowing instant communication across vast distances. Without it, The base would be isolated from the Galactic Communication Network. "Sir?" asked Lieutenant Da-Yun Lim. "What about the defensive systems? Half of them use our targeting computers." "Take everything that's ours," Captain Yoon replied. "Leave them with exactly what they had before we arrived." Similar scenes played out across the galaxy. On research stations, human scientists packed decades of work into storage containers. On trade facilities, human-built equipment disappeared overnight. On military bases, defensive systems went dark as their human components were removed. The Council initially dismissed the human withdrawal as a diplomatic tantrum. Elder Vorthak sent a message to Earth expressing confidence that cooler heads would prevail and that humanity would return to their senses within the week. He was wrong. Engineer Da-Yun Lim led the most critical phase of the exodus. As the Yaiwaznader, chief designer of the quantum tunnel network, she knew exactly how dependent the galaxy had become on human-built infrastructure. The tunnels allowed instant communication and data transfer between star systems, forming the backbone of galactic civilization. "Begin shutdown sequence on Grid 7, she ordered from her command ship. Around her, displays showed the network's status across dozens of sectors. Green lights indicated active tunnels, while red showed systems already offline. One by one, the tunnels shut down. First, the outer rim connections went dark, then the mid-sector links, and finally the core system relays. Each shutdown isolated entire regions from the Galactic Communication Network. On the Council Station, emergency meetings were called as reports flooded in from across the galaxy. Trade contracts couldn't be confirmed. Military orders took days instead of minutes to reach their destinations. Financial markets crashed as real-time transactions became impossible. "How much of the network did humans control?" Elder Vorthak demanded. 87%, replied his technical advisor. They built or maintained almost the entire system. For the first time in millennia, the Council faced complete communication breakdown. Without the quantum tunnels, their sprawling empire was fragmenting into isolated clusters of worlds. Admiral Hee-Jin Lee coordinated the military aspects of the withdrawal from her flagship. The Earth Defense Fleet had grown considerably over the past decade, with new ships incorporating the latest human technology. As they prepared to leave Council space, other species began to understand what they were losing. "Admiral," reported Captain Seok Jin Park from the destroyer Courage, "the Centauri defense grid is requesting permission to accompany us. They say they don't want to remain under Council authority." Admiral Lee wasn't surprised. The Centauri were one of several minor species that had worked closely with humans. They had seen how the Council treated younger civilizations and wanted no part of it. "Granted," she replied. "Any species that wants to leave with us is welcome." The exodus grew as word spread. Dozens of minor species chose to abandon Council space rather than face the void swarm without human support. Entire colonies packed up and joined the human fleet, forming a massive convoy of ships heading toward Earth's territory. President Jae-Young Lee watched the returning fleets from Earth's orbital command center. Ships filled the space around the solar system as humans and their allies arrived from across the galaxy. It was the largest gathering of free beings in recent history. "Status report," she requested. 230 human installations evacuated successfully, reported Admiral Lee. 47 minor species have requested asylum. Total refugee population is approximately 50 million beings. And the quantum tunnel network? Completely offline in all Council sectors. They're cut off from each other and from us. President Lee nodded grimly. The decision to leave hadn't been easy, but the Council's treatment of the Void Swarm crisis had made it necessary. Humanity couldn't remain part of an organization that valued politics over lives. On the Council station, the reality of humanity's departure was finally sinking in. Without human-maintained systems, the station itself was struggling. Life support systems designed by human engineers were failing without proper maintenance. The artificial gravity fluctuated as power grids became unstable. Representative Krelthan slithered through the corridors, noting the problems that were appearing everywhere. Lights flickered in sections where human technicians had once worked. Computer systems crashed without the constant updates that human programmers had provided. How long before we can restore full functionality? He asked the station's chief engineer. Unknown, replied the crystalline being. Human technology integration was more extensive than we realized. They built backup systems within backup systems. Removing their components has created cascade failures we didn't anticipate. The situation was even worse on frontier worlds. Without the quantum communication network, isolated colonies had no way to call for help. The Void Swarm continued their advance, consuming systems that could no longer coordinate their defenses. Captain Ji-Hoon Kim watched the Council's struggles from his new position as commander of the Human Border Patrol. His ships maintained a defensive line at the edge of what was now being called the Terran Republic. Beyond that line lay Council space, where chaos was spreading faster than the Void Swarm itself. "Sir," called his communications officer, "we're receiving distress calls from Council territories. Multiple worlds requesting assistance." "Response?" Captain Kim asked. "None authorized. Our orders are to defend Republic space only." It was hard to listen to the desperate pleas for help, but Captain Kim understood the necessity. The Council had made their choice when they dismissed human offers of assistance. Now they would face the consequences alone. Dr. So-Young Choi worked in her new laboratory on Luna, developing the quantum disruption weapons that could stop the Void Swarm. The technology was nearly ready, but it would be used to defend human space, not Council worlds. She felt no satisfaction in the irony, only sadness for the billions who would suffer because of their leader's arrogance. The final ship to leave Council space was Ambassador Taemin Park's diplomatic vessel. As it crossed the boundary into Republic territory, he activated the general broadcast system. His message would reach every functioning receiver in the galaxy. To the Galactic Council and all who hear this transmission, he began. "Humanity has withdrawn from your organization and your space. We will no longer serve as your laborers, your soldiers, or your expendable resources. The children are going home. Good luck." The transmission ended, leaving Council space in silence. For the first time in their history, they were truly alone. Behind the human ships, the lights of the galaxy began to flicker and fade. Without the infrastructure that humanity had built and maintained, the Council's empire was collapsing into isolation. Trade stopped. Communication failed. Unity dissolved into chaos. And in the dark spaces between the stars, the Void Swarm continued their relentless advance toward the heart of galactic civilization. 6 months after humanity's departure, the galaxy was falling apart. Director Yeon-Soo Kim sat in the new Terran Communications Authority headquarters on Luna, monitoring what remained of galactic communications. Her screens showed a map of known space with green dots representing active communication nodes and red showing dead zones. The red was spreading like a disease. "Daily report," she requested from her assistant. 7 more sectors went dark overnight, Lieutenant Hansol Park replied. "The Rigel Trade Alliance lost contact with their outer colonies 3 days ago. The crystalline hegemony's core worlds can only communicate with each other using old-style radio transmissions that take months to cross their territory." Director Kim shook her head. The Council had built their empire on the assumption that faster-than-light communication would always be available. When humans had constructed the quantum tunnel network, they had become completely dependent on it. Now, without human maintenance, the system was collapsing sector by sector. Any distress calls? Hundreds. Most are automated signals from abandoned stations. A few are from Council fleets requesting navigation assistance. Response? None. Per presidential order, we monitor only. No assistance to Council territories. It was hard to listen to the desperate calls for help, but the Republic's position was clear. The Council had chosen to reject human assistance and treat humanity as expendable. Now, they would face the consequences of that decision. Commander Seokjin Park analyzed tactical reports from his position aboard the Republic defense ship Liberty. His job was to track the Void Swarm's progress and ensure they didn't threaten Republic space. What he was seeing disturbed him. "The Swarm has consumed another 12 systems," he reported to Admiral Lee during their daily briefing. "They're moving faster now, adapting their tactics." Council resistance is completely ineffective. What about their defensive strategies? Admiral Lee asked. Traditional energy weapons, kinetic barriers, nuclear mines. None of it works. The swarm just absorbs the energy and uses it to create more units. They're actually getting stronger with each engagement. Admiral Lee studied the tactical display. The Void Swarm's advance was like watching a slow-motion catastrophe. Each red dot on the map represented a destroyed world, often with billions of inhabitants. The Council's conventional weapons were not just useless against the mechanical plague, they were making it stronger. Any change in the Council's strategy? None. They keep trying the same failed approaches. Elder Vorthak issued a statement yesterday calling for patience and traditional methods. They're still refusing to consider alternative technologies. Alternative technologies. Both officers knew that meant human quantum disruption weapons. Dr. So-Young Choi had perfected the design months ago, but it would only be used to defend Republic space. Meanwhile, humanity was thriving in their self-imposed isolation. President Jae-Young Lee toured the new settlements that had been established for refugee species. Former council colonies that had chosen to join the Republic were being integrated into human territory with remarkable success. Population report, she requested from Colonial Administrator Kyung-Min Jung. 63 million beings from 47 different species now call Republic space home, Administrator Jung replied. Productivity is up 30% compared to their previous lives under council rule. Morale surveys show satisfaction rates above 90%. The success wasn't accidental. Unlike the council's rigid hierarchy, the Republic treated all species as equals. Former council subject races found themselves with voting rights, property ownership, and opportunities for advancement that had been denied to them for generations. What do they say about their former lives? President Lee asked. The reports are consistent. They describe the council as oppressive, dismissive, and concerned only with maintaining power for the elder species. Many say they feel more free and valued in 6 months under Republic rule than they did in decades under the council. Dr. So-Young Choi made her daily rounds through the quantum research facility, checking on the weapon systems that could end the Void Swarm threat. The technology was ready, tested, and waiting for deployment, but it would only be used if the swarm threatened Republic space. Doctor, called Research Assistant Jae-Ho Kim, I've been analyzing the swarm's behavioral patterns. They're not just destroying randomly. There's intelligence behind their actions. Dr. Choi reviewed his data. The patterns were clear once you knew what to look for. The Void Swarm was systematically targeting advanced civilizations while avoiding primitive worlds. They were hunting technology, not just consuming matter. They're seeking threats, she realized. They identify advanced species and eliminate them before they can develop countermeasures, which means they'll come for us eventually. The Republic's technological advancement makes us a priority target. The prediction proved accurate sooner than expected. Long-range sensors detected Void Swarm scouts at the edge of Republic space, studying human defenses from a safe distance. The mechanical entities were learning, preparing for an assault on humanity's new empire. Captain Dong-Hyun Choi commanded the Deep Space Monitoring Station that first detected the swarm's interest in Republic territory. His sensors showed dozens of small mechanical probes conducting reconnaissance along the border. They're mapping our defenses, he reported to Fleet Command. Testing response times, cataloging weapon types, analyzing patrol patterns. This isn't random exploration. It's military intelligence gathering. The news reached President Lee within hours. The Republic's leadership gathered for an emergency meeting to discuss their options. The debate was brief but intense. We could share our quantum disruption technology with the Council, suggested Foreign Minister Tae-Young Park. Help them. Stop the swarm before it reaches us. After what they did to us, Admiral Lee responded. They called us warmongers and primitives. They refused our help when billions were dying. Why should we save them now? Because if the swarm consumes the entire council, they'll be stronger when they attack us, Minister Park replied. President Lee considered both positions. The moral argument for helping was strong. Billions of innocent beings were dying in council space. But the practical argument against it was equally compelling. The Council had treated humanity as expendable and would likely do so again if given the chance. "The decision stands," she said finally. "We defend Republic space and our allies. The Council made their choice when they rejected our help. We won't make that mistake again." The meeting ended with orders to strengthen border defenses and prepare for the coming conflict. Humanity would face the Void Swarm alone, using the technology the Council had dismissed as primitive and dangerous. 3 weeks later, sensor technician Hanul Kim detected something that changed everything. Her deep space monitoring equipment picked up massive energy signatures moving through the void toward both Council space and Republic territory. "Admiral," she called, her voice tight with concern. "The swarm isn't just targeting Council worlds anymore. They're moving toward our space too. Multiple fleets approaching from different directions." Admiral Lee studied the sensor data with growing alarm. The Void Swarm had apparently decided that humanity posed too great a threat to ignore. They were launching a coordinated assault on Republic space while continuing their attack on Council territory. Estimated time to contact? 18 days for the first wave, 43 days for the main assault force. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. The Void Swarm was coming for humanity, and when they arrived, they would be stronger than ever, having consumed dozens of Council worlds. The mechanical plague had identified the Republic as their primary threat, and were preparing to eliminate it. President Lee's voice was calm when she spoke, but her words carried the weight of destiny. "Send word to all Republic worlds. Humanity is at war." Outside the command center's windows, the Republic fleet began to mobilize. Ships that had been built in peaceful times would soon face an enemy that had destroyed civilizations older than humanity itself. The galaxy's youngest spacefaring species was about to fight for their survival against its oldest mechanical nightmare. In the distance, the first distress calls from Council space continued to echo through the void, growing weaker as more worlds fell silent. Soon, there would be no one left to call for help. The Void Swarm was finishing what they had started, and only the Republic stood in their way. The children of Earth were about to discover what it truly meant to stand alone against the darkness. The Council's situation became desperate as the Void Swarm reached the inner territories. 17 core worlds had fallen in the past month, their populations consumed and their resources transformed into more mechanical horrors. The empire that had ruled the galaxy for millennia was collapsing. High Chancellor Morthak stood in what remained of the Council chamber, looking at the damage around him. Half the seats were empty, their representatives either dead or fled to hiding. The great crystal dome overhead was cracked, and emergency lighting cast strange shadows on the walls. "How many ships do we have left?" he asked his military advisor. "Perhaps 300 across all remaining fleets," Admiral Zontar replied. "Most of our shipyards have been destroyed or abandoned. We cannot build replacements." The numbers were staggering. At the height of their power, the Council had commanded over 50,000 warships. Now they barely had enough vessels to defend a single star system. And the human Republic? Intelligence suggests they have maintained their full fleet strength. Approximately 2,000 ships plus the forces of their allied species. Chancellor Morthak felt something he had never experienced in his long life. Desperation. The proud Council that had dismissed humanity as primitive children now faced extinction while those same humans thrived in their independence. "Prepare a diplomatic vessel," he ordered. "We're going to Earth." The journey to human space took 2 weeks. Chancellor Morthak's ship was one of the last vessels capable of long-range travel, as most of the quantum tunnel network remained offline. They traveled through dark space, passing the ruins of Council worlds and the expanding territory of the Void Swarm. Earth appeared on their sensors like a beacon of hope. The Sol system bustled with activity, massive orbital stations, defensive platforms and fleets of advanced warships. It was clear that humanity had not only survived their departure from Council space, but had grown stronger. Admiral Heejin Lee, now Supreme Commander of Terran forces, received the Council delegation aboard her flagship Indomitable. The massive vessel was a testament to human engineering, equipped with weapons and defenses that far surpassed traditional council technology. Chancellor Morthak entered the conference room accompanied by two other surviving council members. They looked haggard and defeated, nothing like the arrogant leaders who had dismissed humanity months earlier. Admiral Lee sat at the head of a polished table, flanked by her senior officers. "Chancellor," Admiral Lee said politely, "welcome to Republic Space. I understand you have something to discuss." "Admiral Lee," Morthak began, his voice lacking its former authority. "The situation in Council Space has become difficult. We find ourselves in need of assistance." "Assistance with what?" Admiral Lee asked, though she already knew the answer. "The Void Swarm. They have consumed most of our territory. Our conventional weapons are useless against them. He paused, the words clearly difficult to speak. "We need your help." Admiral Lee's expression remained neutral. Around the table, her officers maintained professional silence, though their thoughts were clear. These were the same beings who had called humanity warmongers and primitives. "I see," Admiral Lee said. "And what exactly are you offering in return for this assistance?" "The Council is prepared to offer humanity full membership with equal voting rights," Morthak said quickly. "We could discuss territorial concessions, trade agreements, technology sharing." "You misunderstand," Admiral Lee interrupted, her voice cold. "We're not here to negotiate for your approval anymore." The Council representatives looked confused. After millennia of species begging to join their organization, the concept of rejection was foreign to them. "But surely," pressed Council Member Valkyra, "humanity desires galactic cooperation? The benefits of being treated as expendable labor?" Admiral Lee cut her off. "The benefits of having our proposals dismissed without consideration? The benefits of being blamed for seeking solutions to problems you created?" Chancellor Morthak shifted uncomfortably. "There were miscommunications. The Council acknowledges that mistakes were made. We're prepared to rectify past oversights." "Oversights?" Admiral Lee repeated. "Is that what you call abandoning billions of beings to die while rejecting the technology that could save them?" The room fell silent. Through the conference room's windows, the Republic fleet stretched to the horizon, hundreds of ships that could have saved Council worlds if their offers of help hadn't been rejected. "Admiral," Morthak said quietly, "pride aside, we need your quantum disruption technology. Without it, the Void Swarm will consume everything, including your Republic." "Now you're interested in our primitive technology," Admiral Lee observed. "How convenient." Captain Dong-hyun Choi spoke for the first time. "Our sensor data shows the swarm is 3 weeks from your capital world. How many evacuation ships do you have?" 40, perhaps 50 vessels capable of interstellar travel," Morthak admitted. "For how many beings?" "Approximately 2 billion in the core systems." The mathematics were brutal. Even if every ship ran constantly, they could evacuate less than 1% of the population before the swarm arrived. "You understand," Admiral Lee said, "that we have no legal obligation to assist Council territory. When you rejected our help and dismissed our people, you severed those agreements." "Legal obligations," Morthak said desperately. "But what about moral obligations? The innocents who will die?" "Where was your moral obligation when you abandoned the Outer Rim colonies?" Admiral Lee shot back. "When you refused to consider our solutions? When you called us warmongers for offering to fight?" The Chancellor had no answer. The Council's treatment of humanity had been consistently dismissive and often cruel. Now they faced the consequences of that arrogance. Sensor technician Hanul Kim entered the conference room and approached Admiral Lee. She whispered, something that made the Admiral's expression change from cold anger to grim determination. "Gentlemen," Admiral Lee announced, "this discussion has become academic. Our long-range sensors have detected something that changes the situation considerably." She activated the holographic display in the center of the table. The image showed a map of local space with red dots indicating void swarm positions. "The swarm isn't just moving toward Council space anymore," she explained. They've identified humanity as their primary threat. Multiple fleets are approaching Republic territory from different vectors. The Council representatives stared at the display. The mechanical plague was targeting both empires simultaneously. How long? Chancellor Morthak asked. 12 days, too. First contact with our outer defenses, Admiral Lee replied. The main assault force will arrive 8 days after that. Then we're all doomed, Valkyra whispered. No, Admiral Lee said firmly. We're not. She stood and walked to the window, looking out at the Republic fleet, ships bearing the flags of dozens of species, humans and aliens who had chosen freedom over oppression, prepared for the greatest battle in galactic history. Humanity will fight, she declared. We'll use every weapon we have, every ship, every technological advantage. We'll defend our Republic and our allies with everything we possess. And the Council worlds? Morthak asked hopefully. Admiral Lee turned back to face them. Her expression was not cruel, but it was absolutely final. That is not our responsibility. You made that clear when you rejected our help. The Council chose to face this threat alone. That choice stands. But billions will die, Valkyra protested. Yes, Admiral Lee agreed sadly. They will. Just as billions died in the Outer Rim while you pursued 50-year construction projects instead of implementing our solutions. Just as billions more died when you refused to let us fight because we were too primitive to understand galactic warfare. The Council delegation sat in stunned silence. They had come seeking salvation and found only the consequences of their own choices. However, Admiral Lee continued, any being who can reach Republic space will be granted asylum. We don't abandon people the way your Council abandoned entire worlds. She pressed a control on the table, and the conference room doors opened. Captain Kim will escort you back to your ship. I suggest you begin evacuation procedures immediately. You have very little time. As the Council representatives filed out, Chancellor Morthak stopped at the doorway. Admiral, he said quietly, what you're planning to do, fighting the swarm alone, it's suicide. Even with your quantum weapons, you don't have enough ships to stop them. Admiral Lee's smile held no warmth. Chancellor, you never understood humanity's greatest strength. We don't fight alone. We fight for each other. The doors closed, leaving Admiral Lee alone with her officers. Outside, the Republic fleet continued its preparations. They faced impossible odds against an enemy that had destroyed civilizations across the galaxy. But they would fight anyway. Because that's what humans did.